Some of the biggest names in the marijuana industry are in Vancouver this weekend to discuss legalizing weed. One topic sure to be on the table is packaging, after the Liberal government asked a task force to determine advertising regulations around pot. Mark Zekulin is the president of Tweed Inc. He joins us now from Ottawa. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, as we move forward with this new legislation, why do marijuana producers want to use images on their packaging?
Yeah, I think it's there's a big debate that has to happen, and a lot of this was laid out in a paper just put out by the government's task force. And the question they basically asked is, what should the advertising regime look like, and basically flagged, should it be like alcohol or should it be like tobacco? And I think everybody agrees this is a very complex and different product. It certainly shouldn't be advertised like a book or a box of cereal. But I think there is a need to ensure that producers can explain to customers what they're getting, because it's a very complex product. There's thousands of different types, different smells, different tastes, and consumer choice relies on having to get the basic information to make the right choice.
And so tell us a bit more about what kind of information that these packages would have then.
Yeah, so I think it's really just a necessity to give the information that allows a conversation, right? So I mean, Tweed, for example, produces some product in a greenhouse, and it's nice to get that information across to people. Some product is made indoors, some is made in a greenhouse. Some is made with high THC that will have a very psychoactive effect, and others have much lower amounts. Some will help you sleep, some will give you energy. Some have a sort of a peppery flavor, and others have a berry flavor. So there's a bunch of information to get across, and I think it's a very unique moment in time where a lot of Canadians are going to be exposed to cannabis like this for the first time, and there needs to be the right information to have a good conversation and dialogue to understand cannabis, to make informed decisions, and ultimately have an enjoyable experience as opposed to a negative one.
Right, and beyond packaging, there could also be restrictions on how pot is advertised. How it's advertised. How will that impact the industry?
Well, I think that makes sense, and I think most people would agree it makes sense to put limits on advertising. Because the government has certain very appropriate objectives, keeping cannabis out of the hands of children, you really don't want to do anything that promotes cannabis. But I think what we've seen is that the demand is already there. The government is doing this, introducing a regime for cannabis because people are consuming it. So it's not really about promoting the product, but it's about ensuring that when a customer has decided that they want to try cannabis, that they have the information to get the product that's right for them.
And how can we learn from other countries in terms of how they've gone ahead? I'm sure there's a few out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been a couple U.S. states that have moved forward. Colorado being one famous example where I think people think it went too far, and I don't know if there were billboards, but where there was probably a little bit too much cannabis in people's faces, and I'm not sure Canadians necessarily want to see that. So that's one lesson learned. But again, it's they have to now look at clawing back, and here in Canada, there's this very unique opportunity, and it's unique because there's nowhere else that's done this nationally like this, and I think it's about getting that right balance that allows for consumer choice, allows for a proper conversation and education pieces to begin, but also meets the government's objectives of keeping it out of the hands of children and having a very responsible system.
Okay, President of Tweed Incorporated, Mark Zekulin in Ottawa. Thank you.